I'm Johnny, 32 years old, and I built a classic car collection worth $2 million through years of hard work and smart investments. Cars have been my passion since I was old enough to hold a toy Corvette. Little did I know, my prized collection would become the target of my family's shocking demand. My unemployed sister, Sarah, needed a house, and suddenly my parents expected me to liquidate everything I love to make it happen. Before I tell you how I outsmarted my family's scheme, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to protect something you love from people who didn't understand its value. Growing up in suburban Chicago, cars weren't just transportation to me. They were works of art, engineering marvels with personalities of their own. My earliest memories involve sitting on my dad Richard's lap in his 1967 Mustang, pretending to steer while he made engine noises. Back then, he encouraged my passion. "Johnny, someday you'll have your own collection," he'd say, ruffling my hair as we flipped through car magazines together on Sunday afternoons. That supportive relationship began changing when I turned 18. While my parents pushed me toward a practical business degree, I was secretly coding in my dorm room, developing what would eventually become TrackSync, a logistics management software that revolutionized how shipping companies tracked their fleets. By 26, I had sold my startup for enough money to be financially independent for life, if I lived modestly. But modesty wasn't in my plans when it came to automobiles. The day after the acquisition finalized, I bought my first serious collector's car, a pristine 1970 Dodge Challenger R, tea and plum, crazy purple, with the original Hemi engine. I still remember how my hands trembled signing those papers. How the rumble of that engine vibrated through my chest on the drive home. That car became the cornerstone of what would grow into my 12-car collection. Each edition had its own acquisition story. The 1963 split-window Corvette came from an elderly gentleman who made me promise to drive it, not just store it. I did, taking it out every second Sunday like clockwork. The 1955 Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing required 6 months of negotiations with a collector in Germany, including a tense bidding war that I won by just $3,000. My 1969 Boss 429 Mustang was discovered in a barn in rural Kentucky, requiring a complete restoration that I personally supervised for 18 months. My Ferrari Testarossa came with original documentation signed by Enzo Ferrari himself. The 1970 Plymouth Superbird, with its iconic wing, was purchased at Barrett-Jackson after I outbid a famous rock star. Each vehicle represented not just monetary value but countless hours, researching its history, authenticating its parts, and maintaining its condition. While my car collection grew, my relationship with my parents deteriorated. Richard and Linda, once proud of their son's success, began making snide comments about excessive spending and questioning why I needed so many toys. What they never acknowledged was how methodically I built my wealth, investing most of my acquisition money wisely, donating to charity, and only spending a fraction on my passion. Their attitude seemed to stem partly from embarrassment that their other child, my sister Sarah, couldn't maintain steady employment. Sarah and I were twins born just 7 minutes apart, but our life trajectories couldn't have been more different. While I worked 70-hour weeks building my company, Sarah bounced between college majors, finally graduating with an art history degree that she never used. Sarah's employment history read, like a catalog of half-hearted attempts: 3 months at an art gallery, quit because her boss was too demanding. 6 months as an administrative assistant, fired for excessive absences a year at a nonprofit organization, lost funding, and brief stints in retail that never lasted past the probationary period. Between jobs, she lived rent-free with our parents, who constantly made excuses for her bad luck. Despite her pattern of financial irresponsibility, I'd helped Sarah numerous times. I paid her remaining college tuition when our parents' savings ran out. When she totaled her first car, I covered the insurance deductible and down payment on a replacement. After her second car was repossessed due to missed payments, I co-signed for a third, more affordable option. When she faced eviction from her first apartment, I covered 4 months of back rent. Each time, the help came with promises that things would be different and that she was really getting her life together this time. Last Christmas, Sarah announced she was pursuing a career as a social media influencer. She requested and received an expensive camera and lighting setup from our parents. 3 months later, her channel had 12 subscribers and 3 videos before she abandoned it, claiming the market was too saturated for newcomers. Through all this, our parents never asked Sarah to account for her spending or set deadlines for finding employment. Instead, they began dropping hints about how I should share my good fortune with my struggling twin. Their not-so-subtle comments escalated over months, but nothing prepared me for what would happen at our family dinner in July. The text message from my mother caught me off guard. Family dinner this Sunday at 6. Important matters to discuss. Please be punctual. The formal tone was unusual. Typically, my mother's messages consisted of forwarded chain letters or random emojis she didn't understand how to use properly. Something felt off, but family dinners had become rare enough that I accepted without question. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' modest ranch-style home precisely at 6, driving my least flashy car, a modern SUV I used for practical purposes. Experience had taught me that arriving in anything collectible would trigger comments about showing off. The tension was palpable the moment I stepped through the door. My father greeted me with a distracted handshake instead of his usual bear hug. My mother busied herself in the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. Sarah sat at the dining table, eyes puffy as though she'd been crying, but she brightened noticeably when I entered. "Johnny, I'm so glad you could make it," she exclaimed, with unusual enthusiasm. It's been forever since we had a proper family dinner. Dinner itself was my mother's typical Sunday fare pot: roast mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and her famous dinner rolls. The conversation remained superficial: local weather, a neighbor's new landscaping, a cousin's recent wedding. Nobody mentioned the important matters referenced in my mother's message. It wasn't until my father brought out coffee and my mother's apple pie that the atmosphere shifted. My father cleared his throat in that distinctive way that always preceded his serious announcements. "Johnny, we asked you here tonight because there's a family situation that requires your attention." He began setting down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. My mother reached over to pat Sarah's hand. "Your sister has been going through a difficult time." Sarah dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "My landlord is selling the building. I have 60 days to find a new place, but there's nothing affordable in the area." "That's tough," I said cautiously. "Have you looked at neighboring towns? Maybe with roommates?" My father waved dismissively. "Sarah needs stability, not roommates. She's 32 years old. It's time she had a place of her own." "I've been thinking," Sarah continued, suddenly animated. "This is actually an opportunity. Instead of throwing money away on rent, I should buy a house. Something small, but cute, with a yard for gardening. I've always wanted to grow my own vegetables." I nodded politely, wondering why this conversation required my presence. Then my mother dropped the bombshell. "We think it's time you helped your sister in a meaningful way, Johnny. You have the means to make this happen for her." My father leaned forward. "You have that collection of cars sitting in warehouses. 12 vehicles for one person is excessive by anyone's standards. If you sold even half of them, Sarah could buy a nice starter home outright." The room went silent as I processed what I was hearing. They weren't suggesting I help with a down payment or co-sign a mortgage. They expected me to liquidate my carefully curated collection, to purchase a house outright for my perpetually unemployed sister. You don't need 12 cars, my mother added, softly misinterpreting my silence as consideration rather than shock. No one does. Family should help family, Johnny. I've been looking at listings. Sarah chimed in, pulling out her phone to show me pictures of suburban houses. This one's perfect. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, updated kitchen. It's listed at $420,000. I placed my fork down carefully. Sarah, do you have any income right now? She flushed. I'm between opportunities, but I've got several promising leads. The influencer thing didn't work out, but I'm exploring options in event planning. My friend Tiffany says I have a natural talent for it. How would you pay property taxes? Utilities maintenance costs, I asked. We could help with that initially, my father interjected, until she finds her footing. And how long would that be? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. A year. 5 years. Indefinitely. My mother's expression hardened. That's unnecessary, Johnny. We're talking about your twin sister. Would it kill you to be generous? For once. You have more than enough. I've been generous, I said quietly. College tuition. 3 cars. Rent assistance. Credit card debt. Each time with the understanding that Sarah was working toward self-sufficiency. That was pocket change compared to what you can afford, my father countered. Those cars just sit there most of the time depreciating. Actually, they've appreciated considerably, I corrected. Classic cars are investments. Each one has increased in value since purchase. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. So your cars matter more than your family. Then me, I need a home, Johnny. Somewhere permanent, where I can finally get my life together. You've had multiple opportunities to get your life together, I pointed out. What makes this different from every other fresh start? That's cruel, my mother gasped. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I asked, genuinely curious. I paid for my own education with scholarships and part-time jobs. I built my business without any financial help. We raised you, my father thundered. We gave you values and a home. And this is how you repay us. By refusing to help your sister, when you're sitting on a $2 million collection of toys. The conversation devolved from there. My parents alternated between guilt-tripping. After all, we've sacrificed and minimizing my attachment to my collection. They're just things, Johnny. Sarah oscillated between tears and indignation, accusing me of always thinking I was better than the family. After an exhausting 30 minutes, I stood up. I'll think about what I can do to help, I said, knowing this was the only way to exit gracefully. But I need time to consider options. My father's expression softened slightly, interpreting my response as capitulation. That's all we're asking, son. Just think about what matters most in life. As I drove home that night, their expectations weighed heavily on me. They genuinely believed I owed Sarah a house simply because I could afford it. More troublingly, they saw my refusal as selfishness rather than a legitimate boundary. In their minds, my success obligated me to solve everyone else's problems regardless of how those problems originated. The next morning, I sat in my home office staring at spreadsheets that cataloged my car collection. Each vehicle represented not just monetary value, but years of research, negotiation, and meticulous care. The 1,970 Plymouth Superbird had required flying to Arizona 3 times to verify its authenticity before purchase. The 1,967 Shelby GT 500 came with documentation proving it was one of the first 100 produced. The 1,989 Ferrari F40 had been a celebration purchase after landing my company's first major client. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Sarah sending more house listings, each more expensive than the last. This one has a pool, read one text, perfect for summer parties. Another message showcased a house with potential for a home office where I could start my event planning business. I silenced my phone and called Michael, my best friend since college, and the only person who fully understood my family dynamics. "They want you to," what he exclaimed, after I explained the situation. "That's insane, Johnny. Your collection isn't just cars, it's your passion, your reward for everything you've built." "They don't see it that way," I sighed. "To them, I'm hoarding toys, while Sarah struggles." "Has Sarah ever held a job for more than a year?" Michael asked rhetorically. "Would giving her a house magically transform her into a responsible adult?" That question crystallized something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. My parents' request wasn't really about helping Sarah, it was about enabling her continued dependence. A house wouldn't solve her fundamental issues with accountability and work ethic. If anything, it would reinforce her belief that others should solve her problems. "Remember when you helped her with that business idea?" Michael continued. "The online boutique she abandoned after 3 months because inventory management was too stressful. You lost, what, $20,000 on that venture?" "$27,000, I corrected, plus the website development costs. And before that, the photography studio equipment that collected dust in your parents' garage." I rubbed my temples, recalling each failed venture. "They've always favored her, Mike. When we were kids, she got new clothes while I got hand-me-downs from cousins. She got dance lessons while I mowed lawns to save for computer parts. When she wrecked Dad's car at 16, they replaced it. When I asked to borrow the family car for prom, I had to pay for the gas." "Classic golden child syndrome," Michael observed. "Nothing she does wrong is her fault. Nothing you achieve is entirely your merit." I spent the afternoon researching housing markets in my parents' area. Starter homes began around $350,000, with anything nice exceeding $400,000. Even selling my least valuable cars would mean liquidating at least 6 vehicles, half my collection, to generate enough cash for the purchase, plus inevitable future emergencies. That evening, I visited my storage facility, a climate-controlled warehouse where 10 of my 12 cars resided. The other 2 stayed at my home garage. Walking among them, I remembered the story behind each acquisition. The 1969 Dodge Charger RT had belonged to my college programming professor, who sold it to me after seeing my dedication to both coding and cars. He'd accepted payments over 3 years while I built my company. The 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS had required extensive negotiation with a reluctant seller in California, who finally relented after I shared my detailed preservation plans. The 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air had been my first significant restoration project, involving 18 months of sourcing original parts from across the country. These weren't just status symbols or toys, as my parents dismissed them. Each represented relationships built, knowledge gained, and milestones celebrated. Selling them to buy a house for someone who had repeatedly demonstrated financial irresponsibility felt wrong on every level, yet I couldn't simply refuse without consequences. My parents would escalate their pressure campaign, potentially involving extended family members. Sarah would portray me as the villainous wealthy brother who refused to help his struggling twin. The family narrative would become one where I chose things over people, a simplistic framing that ignored the complex reality. Around midnight, a solution crystallized. I wouldn't sell my collection, but I also wouldn't leave it vulnerable to further manipulation. If my family believed I might capitulate to their demands, they might take matters into their own hands, perhaps by guilting me into handing over keys or documentation, or even attempting to access the vehicles themselves. I needed to protect my collection while appearing to consider their request. and I needed to act quickly before the pressure intensified. Picking up my phone, I called Frank, my trusted mechanic, who had helped maintain my collection for years. "Frank, I need a favor, a big one. How quickly can we move 12 cars to a new location quietly?" Frank whistled low when I explained the situation. "Your family's trying to strong-arm you into selling the collection." "That's cold, Johnny. Real cold." "Can you help me move them?" I pressed. "I need somewhere. Secure somewhere. My family wouldn't think to look." "I know a place," Frank said after a moment's consideration. "My cousin owns an industrial storage facility in Kenosha, about 90 minutes north. Climate-controlled, state-of-the-art. Security discreet. He rents units to collectors who value privacy. Celebrities, professional athletes, people who don't want their assets publicly known." "Perfect. Can we get space for all 12? "For you. Absolutely. When do you want to move them?" I checked my watch. It was just past midnight. "Tonight. Right now." There was a brief silence. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I don't trust my sister not to show up with some scheme to pressure me. The sooner they're moved, the better." Frank sighed. "All right, let me make some calls. We'll need drivers, trustworthy ones. Each car needs to be prepped for transport. And we'll need a cover story, in case anyone sees the convoy." While Frank activated his network of trusted mechanics and car enthusiasts, I created a new limited liability company online, Classic Horizon Holdings, listing my attorney as the registered agent. The storage lease would be under this company name, creating an additional layer of protection. If anyone investigated, they wouldn't find my name directly associated with the facility. By 2 in the morning, Frank had assembled a team of 8 reliable drivers, all classic car specialists who understood the value and delicacy of what they'd be transporting. I met them at the warehouse where Frank was already preparing each vehicle for the journey. "We're checking tire pressure, fluid levels, and battery charge," he explained. "These babies need to make the trip without incident. No breakdowns. No attention." I walked each driver through the specific quirks of their assigned vehicles. The Corvette's clutch catches high, I told a gray-haired gentleman named Pete. The Mustang's fuel gauge reads incorrect. After 3/4 tank, I warned another driver. By 3:30, we had a staggered departure plan. Cars would leave individually at 5-minute intervals, taking different routes for the first 20 miles, before converging on a predetermined rural highway. Frank would lead in his pickup truck, while I would drive sweep in my SUV, monitoring for any issues. "Like a presidential motorcade," joked one of the younger mechanics, earning a stern look from Frank. "This isn't a joyride," Frank reminded everyone. "These vehicles are irreplaceable. Drive them like you're transporting delicate artwork, because you are." At exactly 4 in the morning, our operation commenced. The rumble of 12 meticulously maintained engines pierced the night as drivers took positions in the parking lot. Frank handed out sealed envelopes containing emergency contact information and detailed routes. "No phones except for emergencies," he instructed. "No stopping except at the designated rest area. No photography. No social media. As far as anyone knows, this never happened." The 1,970 Dodge Challenger departed, first headlights cutting through pre-dawn darkness. 5 minutes later, the split-window Corvette followed. One by one, each vehicle disappeared into the night, carrying pieces of my passion to safety. My heart pounded as I watched the gull-wing Mercedes, the crown jewel of my collection, pull away. Its distinctive doors and silver bodywork momentarily illuminated by security lights before vanishing down the access road. This was really happening. I took position as the final vehicle in our improvised convoy, maintaining distance while keeping visual contact with the last classic, my Ferrari Testarossa. The Red Beauty performed flawlessly, its distinctive side strakes occasionally catching moonlight as we traveled north. Our most tense moment came near the Wisconsin border, when a state police cruiser appeared behind my SUV. I maintained exactly the speed limit, watching anxiously as the patrol car paced us for several miles. Up ahead, I could see the drivers of my classics, also reducing speed slightly, their brake lights briefly illuminating as they adjusted. After what felt like an eternity, the cruiser exited the highway, apparently finishing its patrol route. The collective exhale over our convoy's radio channel was audible. Dawn was breaking as we approached the Kenosha facility, an unassuming industrial building with no external signage indicating its valuable contents. A security guard verified our prearranged credentials before opening massive bay doors that led underground to a fortified garage area. One by one, each vehicle was carefully parked in its designated space. Frank supervised the final positioning while I completed paperwork with the facility manager, who asked no questions beyond the necessary contractual requirements. By 7:30, all 12 cars were secured. Modern security cameras with encrypted feeds would allow me to monitor my collection remotely. Temperature and humidity controls would maintain optimal preservation conditions. Biometric access ensured only authorized personnel could enter the storage area. As the drivers departed in a shuttle van Frank had arranged, I walked the row of my now hidden treasures. The morning light filtering through skylights glinted off chrome bumpers and polished paint. They looked at home here, protected and dignified. "Your family won't find them," Frank assured me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Everything's under the LLC. The paperwork shows a corporate collection relocated for insurance purposes." I nodded, emotion suddenly catching in my throat. "Thanks, Frank. I couldn't have done this without you." "Families can be complicated," he replied sagely. "Sometimes you need to protect what matters to you, even from the people who should understand its value." As we left the facility, exhaustion hit me, both physical and emotional. The adrenaline of the night's operation gave way to the reality of what had transpired. I had physically removed my collection from my family's reach, but the deeper conflict remained unresolved. My phone, which I'd silenced hours earlier, showed multiple missed calls from my parents and sister. They were expecting an answer to their demand. Little did they know, I'd already given it, not with words, but with actions under cover of darkness. The following afternoon, my phone rang with my father's number. Having caught a few hours of sleep, I felt prepared for the conversation. "We expected to hear from you this morning," he said without preamble. "Your mother and I want to know if you've made a decision about helping your sister." "I'd prefer to discuss this in person," I replied calmly. "I can come by around 4. There was a pause. "That's acceptable. Sarah will be here too." When I arrived at my parents' house, the three of them sat in the living room like a tribunal awaiting a defendant. My mother's face showed practiced disappointment. My father's barely contained impatience, and Sarah's a strange mixture of expectation and resentment. "I've given your request serious consideration." I began, sitting in the armchair facing them. "I understand Sarah's housing situation is precarious, and I sympathize with that challenge." My mother's expression softened slightly. Sarah leaned forward. "However," I continued, "I cannot purchase a house for her. I'm willing to help her develop a sustainable plan toward home ownership based on her own income and credit. But buying a property outright isn't an option I can support." The brief hope on their faces vanished. "What about the cars?" my father demanded. "You have 12 vehicles gathering dust. Surely you can part with some of them for your sister's well-being." I took a deep breath. "Actually, I no longer have access to those vehicles." 3 pairs of eyes widened simultaneously. "What do you mean?" my mother asked. "I mean, they're no longer available as assets I can liquidate," I said, carefully, deliberately ambiguous. Sarah gasped. "You sold them already." I neither confirmed nor denied her assumption. "The vehicles are no longer at my disposal for this purpose." So you got rid of them just to spite your sister. My father's voice rose. That's the most selfish thing I've ever heard. I made decisions to protect what I've worked for, I replied evenly. Just as Sarah needs to make decisions to create stability in her own life. Sarah's face crumpled. I can't believe you'd do this to me. I'm about to be homeless, and you're worried about your precious cars. You're not about to be homeless, I countered. You have 60 days to find a new rental. You're fully capable of getting a job to pay for housing just like millions of other adults. In this economy, Sarah scoffed. With my resume gaps, people with much bigger challenges find employment every day, I said. You have a college degree, no health issues, no children to support. You have advantages many job seekers would envy. My mother intervened. Johnny, your sister has always been sensitive. The corporate world isn't suited to her creative temperament. Then she can find work in a creative field, I suggested. Art galleries, design firms, marketing agencies. There are options that don't involve family bailouts. We've always known you were selfish, my father declared. But this exceeds even our lowest expectations. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I interrupted, repeating my question from our previous dinner. Name one thing you've financially supported in my adult life. The question hung in the air unanswered. I've helped Sarah repeatedly, I continued. College tuition, $48,000. 3 cars, totaling $35,000. Rent assistance, $12,000. The failed boutique venture, $27,000 plus expenses. Each time with the understanding that she was working toward independence. That's what family does, my mother insisted. We help each other without keeping score. Except you are keeping score, I pointed out. You're tallying my success against Sarah's struggles and demanding I correct the imbalance regardless of how we each arrived at our current positions. Sarah wiped tears dramatically. I knew you always thought you were better than me, just because you got lucky with that stupid app. Luck, I couldn't help but laugh. I worked 80-hour weeks for 5 years building that stupid app. While you cycled through 3 majors and 5 part-time jobs, you quit because they were beneath you. That's enough, my father interjected. We're getting nowhere with this conversation. For once we agree, I said, standing. I'm willing to help Sarah develop financial literacy and job-searching skills. I'll even cover career counseling, but I won't buy her a house or perpetuate the idea that her problems are everyone's responsibility but her own. My mother's expression hardened. If that's your final answer, perhaps you should leave. It is, I confirmed. And I think that's best for everyone right now. As I reached the door, Sarah called after me. This isn't over, Johnny. Family is supposed to be forever. But you're choosing things over people. I hope you're happy with yourself. I turned back briefly. I'm not choosing things over people. I'm choosing responsibility over enabling and healthy boundaries over emotional manipulation. There's a difference. As I drove away, my phone began buzzing with text messages from my mother. You've broken your sister's heart. We raised you better than this. Family should come first, always. I silenced the notifications, knowing this was just the beginning of their pressure campaign. What they didn't realize was that I had already taken the most important step to protect myself, ensuring my collection was safely beyond their reach or influence. That evening, my parents called 3 times. I let each call go to voicemail, needing space to process the confrontation. The final message from my father contained an ominous statement. Your mother and I will make sure you help your sister one way or another. We won't let you abandon family obligations. The implied threat confirmed I'd made the right decision moving my cars. Whatever they were planning, my most valuable assets were now secure. 3 days of relative silence followed the confrontation. Then on Thursday afternoon, Sarah called unexpectedly. Against my better judgment, I answered. I know you still have the cars, she said without greeting. I saw Drew's Instagram post yesterday. He took a picture with the Ferrari when you guys went driving last weekend. My stomach dropped. Drew, a casual acquaintance, had asked to see the Ferrari when we encountered each other at a cars and coffee event the previous weekend before I moved the collection. I hadn't noticed him taking photos. That post is from Saturday, I said carefully. Things change. Stop lying, Sarah hissed. You made up that whole story about getting rid of the cars just to get us off your back. But Mom and Dad deserve to know the truth. Before I could respond, she hung up. Within an hour, all three of them, my parents and Sarah, were at my front door, unannounced. I opened the door, but blocked the entrance. This isn't a good time for a visit. We're not here to visit my father, said coldly. We're here to discuss your deception. Sarah discovered you still have your car collection. We need to talk about this inside, my mother added, attempting to step forward. No, we don't, I replied firmly. My financial decisions aren't open for family discussion or approval. Sarah pushed past our parents. Where are they? The garage. A storage facility. You owe us the truth, Johnny. I don't owe you anything, I stated calmly. Especially not after this invasion of privacy. You promised to help me, Sarah shouted. I never promised to buy you a house, I corrected. I offered career counseling and financial planning assistance, which still stands. My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. If you won't help your sister voluntarily, perhaps we need to explore other options. What options? I asked, genuinely curious. Legal options, he declared. Sarah tells us you verbally promised to help with her housing situation multiple times. That could constitute a verbal contract. I couldn't help but laugh. First, I never made such promises. Second, even if I had verbal contracts requiring that level of financial commitment aren't enforceable without supporting evidence. We have evidence, Sarah interjected. Text messages where you said you'd always be there for me. General expressions of familial support aren't contractual promises to purchase real estate. I explained, thanking my business background for basic legal knowledge. But feel free to consult an attorney if you'd like clarification. My mother tried a different approach. Johnny, we're worried about you. This attachment to material possessions over family isn't healthy. We're trying to help you as much as Sarah. By attempting to coerce me into liquidating assets against my will, I challenged. That's not help, that's manipulation. If you won't tell us where the cars are, my father threatened, we might need to report them stolen. After all, they've mysteriously disappeared right when Sarah needs financial assistance. The absurdity of the threat might have been comical if it weren't so concerning. Are you seriously threatening to file a false police report? That's a crime, Dad. It wouldn't be false if you've hidden assets to avoid family obligations, he countered. What they didn't know was that my home security system was recording this entire interaction. Every threat, every false accusation, all documented for potential legal protection. I think you should leave now, I said firmly. This conversation isn't productive. We're not going anywhere until you tell us where those cars are. Sarah insisted, attempting to push past me into the house. I blocked her entry. That's trespassing, Sarah. I've asked you to leave my property. Your own family trespassing, my mother gasped. What's happened to you, Johnny? I've established boundaries, I replied. Something this family desperately needs. We raised you, my father growled. We sacrificed for you. You owe us. Parents are supposed to raise their children without expecting repayment, I pointed out. That's parenthood, not an investment strategy. The standoff continued for several more minutes with increasing hostility. Finally, I reached for my phone. I'm calling the police if you don't leave immediately. Your choice. My mother's eyes widened. You'd call the police on your own family. To protect myself from harassment and threats. Yes. After a tense moment, my father grabbed Sarah's arm. Let's go. He's made his choice. As they retreated to their car, Sarah turned back. "This isn't over, Johnny. Family is forever, whether you like it or not." The ominous parting shot lingered as I closed and locked my door immediately, saving the security footage to multiple secure locations. If their threats escalated, I wanted documentation. Over the next week, the harassment continued via text and voicemail. Extended family members began calling, having heard a one-sided version where I'd abandoned my struggling sister despite having millions in cars sitting unused. One particularly disturbing message from my father suggested they might need to involve the IRS to investigate my suspicious financial activities. After the 10th call in 2 days, I contacted Patricia, my attorney, sending her the security footage and message transcripts. "This is textbook harassment," she confirmed after reviewing the evidence, "and their threats about false police reports and unwarranted tax investigations could constitute attempted extortion." "What should I do?" I asked. "First, send a formal cease and desist letter. I'll draft it today. Second, maintain complete documentation of all contact attempts. Third, consider a temporary restraining order if the harassment continues after the letter. A restraining order against my own parents and sister. The concept seemed extreme, yet their behavior had become increasingly unstable. "Family members can be the worst offenders in harassment cases," Patricia explained gently. "Emotional connections often fuel irrational behavior. Your cars are safely stored. Your finances are protected. But your personal well-being matters too." The cease and desist letter was delivered the following day by courier. The response was immediate silence. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits. While relieved, I remained vigilant, knowing this likely represented a tactical retreat rather than acceptance. For the next 2 months, I heard nothing from my immediate family. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned Sarah had finally found employment at a local department store, an entry-level position she had previously considered beneath her qualifications. Whether financial necessity or genuine growth motivated, this change remained unclear. But it represented movement in the right direction. I focused on my business investments and made weekly trips to the Kenosha facility to maintain my collection. Finding peace in the mechanical precision and beauty of the vehicles that had become unexpected symbols of my independence and boundaries. Exactly 67 days after our confrontation, my phone displayed an unexpected notification, a text message from Sarah. My finger hovered over the delete button before curiosity won out. "Got my first paycheck today." It read simply with a photo attached showing a modest, direct deposit confirmation. No demands, no accusations, no manipulative language. Just a simple statement of fact. I waited several hours before responding with a neutral but positive, "Congratulations. How's the job going?" Her reply came minutes later. "Hard. Retail customers can be awful. Feet hurt constantly, but feels good to earn something." The conversation continued cautiously, with Sarah sharing details about her new position, the challenges of adjusting to regular working hours, and her surprise at enjoying aspects of the job she hadn't anticipated. There was a different tone to her messages, a groundedness previously absent. A week later, she sent another text. "Can we meet for coffee? Just us. I have something I need to say in person." Against my better judgment and my attorney's advice, I agreed to meet at a public cafe midway between our homes. I arrived early, choosing a table with clear sight lines to exits and parking my car where I could monitor it throughout our meeting. Sarah arrived precisely on time, another departure from her typically casual approach to punctuality. She looked different. Her elaborate makeup, replaced by a simpler style designer clothes, swapped for practical retail-appropriate attire. "Thanks for coming," she began after ordering a simple black coffee rather than her usual complicated specialty drink. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past 2 months." I nodded but remained silent, waiting. I owe you an apology. She continued, eyes focused on her cup. What we did, what I asked Mom and Dad to help me pressure you into doing was wrong. I had no right to demand you sell your cars for me. The statement was so unexpected I momentarily wondered if this was a new manipulation tactic. Mom and Dad cut me off financially after your lawyer's letter arrived, she explained. They can't afford to support me anymore. Dad's pension only stretches so far, and they've depleted their savings helping me over the years. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. She looked up, surprising me with a small smile. Don't be. It's the best thing that could have happened. I finally had to face reality. No one was coming to rescue me. I had to rescue myself. Hence the retail job. It was the only place that would hire me with my spotty work history, she admitted. The manager took a chance because I was honest about my past employment issues during the interview. Said she appreciated the self-awareness. That's commendable, I acknowledged. Self-reflection isn't easy. Neither is standing on your feet for 8-hour shifts folding clothes that customers destroy minutes later, she laughed. But there's something satisfying about earning every dollar in my account. My first paycheck was tiny compared to what I used to blow through, but it felt different. It felt mine. Over the next hour, Sarah detailed her emerging plans, sharing an apartment with coworkers to make rent affordable, taking free online courses in digital marketing, creating a strict budget for the first time in her life. I'm not asking for money, she clarified, seeming to read my guarded expression. I just wanted you to know I'm figuring things out on my own, and that I understand why you refuse to enable me further. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. Are they supportive of your independence? Sarah sighed. They're struggling to adjust. They built their identity around being my safety net. Dad still sends job listings for positions I'm not qualified for. Mom keeps suggesting I move back home to save money. They mean well, but don't understand that their help was hurting me. As our meeting concluded, Sarah asked hesitantly, Do you think we could try being siblings again? Not immediately, but eventually, I miss having a brother. I'd like that, I admitted. But we need clear boundaries. My finances remain my business. Your choices remain yours. That's fair, she agreed. I'm learning that boundaries are actually healthy, not hostile. Over the following weeks, Sarah and I rebuilt tentative communication. She shared small victories. A customer service award at work. Mastering budgeting software. Completing her first online certification. I offered encouragement without financial intervention, respecting her journey towards self-sufficiency. My relationship with our parents remained strained. They maintained that I had abandoned family values by refusing Sarah's request, though they had ceased active hostility following the attorney's letter. Through Sarah, I learned they were adjusting to their own financial reality, selling their vacation timeshare, downsizing their vehicle, canceling country club membership changes, necessitated by years of supporting Sarah and their retirement. Limitations. 3 months after our coffee meeting, I invited Sarah to visit the new storage facility where my collection resided. As we walked among the carefully preserved vehicles, I shared stories behind each acquisition, the history, the negotiations, the restorations. I never understood before she admitted running her hand along the fender of the split-window Corvette. I just saw dollar signs, not passion or craftsmanship. Want to go for a drive? I offered, selecting the keys to the Mustang, the most forgiving for a passenger experience. Her eyes widened. Really? You'd trust me? In one of these? I'd trust you near one of these, I clarified with a smile. I'll be driving. As we cruised along lakeside roads, engine rumbling beneath us, Sarah asked about my business investments, listening with genuine interest rather than calculation. For the first time in our adult lives, we conversed as equals, different in our choices and circumstances, but equally responsible for our paths. You know what's weird? She reflected as we returned to the storage facility. If you had given me that house, I'd still be the same person, entitled Irresponsible, expecting others to fix my problems. Losing something I thought I deserved led to gaining something I actually needed: self-respect. Her insight struck me as profoundly true. By protecting my boundaries, physically relocating my collection that night, and emotionally standing firm against manipulation, I had inadvertently created space for Sarah's genuine growth. Sometimes the kindest act isn't giving people what they want, but allowing them to discover what they're capable of achieving on their own. That evening, reflecting on our transformed relationship, I realized that setting healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for authentic connections. My cars remained more than mechanical treasures. They had become symbols of a pivotal life lesson. Respecting yourself is the foundation for respecting others, and true generosity emerges from choice, never coercion. The journey from that midnight relocation operation to today had transformed both Sarah and me. She had found strength in self-reliance. I had found courage in maintaining boundaries. Together, we were building something more valuable than houses or cars, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation or resentment. Have you ever had to protect something important from people who didn't understand its value? Or found yourself pressured to sacrifice your passion for someone else's benefit? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life lessons about family dynamics, boundaries, and standing up for yourself. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow others to find their own path, even when it's difficult.